All right, so we're live, so make sure you don't say any cuss words or badmouth anyone like your person. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so we have Sarah here, and Sarah's one of our success stories from our private support group. What's up?
Hey, Chris, how you doing? I'm good, thank you.
I'm doing good. We were just talking, and we've sharing interesting stories on the group, but I just wanted to get your sense of maybe how has the group helped you?
So I found the group really helpful because I wanted some quite specific advice on my situation that might not necessarily have come out of the website or out of the book.
Mm-hmm.
And the girls on the group have been really supportive in terms of sort of reviewing some of my texts or some of the posts that I was going to put on Facebook, but also the one-to-one Facebook Live sessions that you run
Right.
were really helpful because you can ask, questions that are specific to your situation that you might want a second opinion on. So that's what I found most useful.
So the Facebook Lives, that seems to be the pretty popular one, and I've noticed. I think there was 1 week where I took a vacation, and I just made the comment like, "Oh yeah, maybe you guys should do some Facebook Lives because I'm going to be out of town." And everyone just went with it and ran with it. And I've noticed you've done a few Facebook Lives as well.
Yeah,
but
I did a Facebook Live after my meeting with my ex-boyfriend, now boyfriend.
You're right, because you got him back. If you're listening, Sarah got her ex back. So congratulations, Sarah. Hopefully everything's going well so far.
Yeah. Going well so far, so it's just a case of maintaining things and keeping things, ticking over nicely. It's a bit more difficult because obviously it's long distance, but fingers crossed we're meeting up again this month, and then we've got like a long weekend in June, I think, as well. So we've got some dates in the diary.
So long distance relationships, I've obviously been in one before. It's very, very difficult to handle that. So let me get kind of the start to finish story of the breakup to how you got him back, and I guess want to try to analyze for people listening here what worked versus what didn't work to get him back, because honestly, long distance relationships are one of the most difficult situations to succeed in.
Oh, well, mine was even harder because we were in an army long distance relationship, and he was actually on deployment as well. So
you add in the added maybe headwind of not always being able to have some sort of outlet of communication.
Yeah. So where he's actually based is very mountainous and remote. Mm-hmm. So there's no signal, there's no technology, there's no power. So
the no contact rule was pretty easy for you. You just had no way of contacting.
Even if you sent a text message, you wouldn't get it. So they're working, 18 hours a day, 7 days a week for 2-3 months at a time. So even if you had an evening off, you couldn't necessarily travel the 7 hours to go visit and then get back in time for work in the morning. So it was incredibly difficult. So we broke up, not necessarily because of the distance, but the effect the distance had on the relationship. So we didn't have time to get there. It was quite expensive. So in the UK, your girlfriends can't go stay on camp. So you'd have to hire a hotel to go and visit. Okay. Other things like, just because of the distance and not being able to talk as much, you have that sort of drifting connection where you just feel like friends occasionally checking in and touching base. And it didn't really feel like we were in a relationship anymore. Mm-hmm. One of the other things was I wasn't massively supportive of his job. So initially when we first met, he was posted overseas. And when he came back to the UK, I nagged him a little bit and said, when you said you were overseas and you were coming back, you said we'd have weekends and evenings. And that's not the case. And I would nag about it. And, it must have got to him a little bit.
So who broke up with who originally? Was it him to you?
He broke up with me saying that he just didn't see it working with the distance.
Okay.
And we just didn't have time, and it's not you, it's me. And
okay.
I wasn't sure whether it was a case of there was another girl sort of closer. But then when I thought about it, I thought he just doesn't have time to have a girl up in the mountains in the middle of nowhere. So I nattered him a bit on day 1 and 2. I'll be honest. I
think everyone does that. Yeah, everyone. Yeah.
So I sent about 4 or 5 text messages and then made a couple of calls. And then on day 2, I was like, all right, this is probably not getting me anywhere, so I'll just stop. and left it a few days. And then I decided that it would be a good idea to try and steal the breakup. So, make it my idea.
Okay.
So I told him that, I thought that we should break up, and he was obviously confused because I was amazing, and that he should spend some time alone while he's on operation to think about things. But in the meantime, I was going to date and see what was out there. And if I was still single when he made his mind up, then maybe we could talk and I would consider it. But good luck finding a replacement. I was quite harsh about it when I stole the breakup. But I just thought, you know what, you've dumped me, I don't care. And then after that, I went into my no contact period. And that lasted 24 days.
Okay.
So I was aiming for 21, but I wanted to be in a frame of mind where I woke up and thought, when I send this text message, he's going to be super excited to get it.
Right.
It's going to be amazing, and there's going to be no problems, and he's just going to want to reply straight away. So I waited an extra few days to have that mindset. So during my no contact period, I did all of the stuff on self-improvement, going out, losing a little bit of weight, doing all the stuff that he liked about me beforehand. So, all the kind of, friends and family stuff. And
all that stuff,
liked, but then I focused a lot on the stuff that I knew he wasn't so keen on.
Okay.
As my improvement areas. And I also took it as like the 21 days as time to reflect on whether it was actually worthwhile, because I kind of considered whether or not it would be worthwhile trying to go through the effort of winning someone back if they weren't the sort of happily ever after guy, because it's a lot of effort.
Yeah, it is. It's not an easy thing, No,
definitely not. And I just thought, if he's not the happily ever after guy, then I'm wasting this time instead of finding someone else that could be. So, I took some time out and thought about that, and then used it to plan my Facebook posts and Instagram posts, tie those in with, events that I knew I had coming up. I had a day, the races planned. I had a day out with friends, a little mini break as well. And so
that's really smart. So you actually, did you do that function where you can plan the posts out ahead of time?
Oh yeah, I planned them out
about
weeks in advance. And then I also planned and pre-canned all of my text messages. So they were all pre-written, and I had them for different, because I know you in your book, you talk about having the sort of first contact text messages,
right.
the random text messages, and the memory texts.
Right.
And I broke them down into categories, and I linked each text that I was going to send on a set date to a post that was made in social media. So my post.
So it made sense. It would back up what you were saying, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would use the post as a sort of a bait, as a curiosity builder to springboard the text off.
That is so smart. Wow.
Because I knew that that being stuck in the mountains, he was only going to have a limited amount of time to check his phone and to check his Facebook. And so I knew that I had to be really concise in terms of what I was posting and when, because I didn't want it to be, his newsfeed to be filled up with bump that wasn't useful in terms of what I wanted to communicate. So I would make sure that every post fitted in with the health, wealth, and relationship stuff. And if I could, I would tie them together. So, for example, instead of it just being I'm going running, it would be I'm going running with friends, or I'm going out for a meal with my parents, and I'd tie them together and then link them to one of my text messages and so springboard one off the other. And because I also knew that he only had, literally maybe a few minutes a day to check things, rather than putting together a series of posts, I would take a number of different photographs and make them into a sort of a collage to make a montage of how my day had been, so as he could visually consume that entire post in a second or two, and almost convey more information in a shorter amount of time, so as that I could make the most out of the available Wi-Fi that he had.
Yeah.
Because I knew there was only so much time in a day to be able to check these things.
So let me hear some feedback. Obviously, you've gotten him back now. So did you talk to him at all about whether he went on Facebook and saw those posts and compared the texts, or Yeah, it seems like you just added some extra emotional aspect to the texts when he maybe, let's say you're going to a race and you're talking about this race in a text and he looks on Facebook and sees you at this race or whatever. Did you like hear about from him if he did that?
Yeah, so I mean, I didn't even have to wait for us to meet up for him to sort of talk about my Facebook. Mm-hmm. So the first contact that I made, it was very brief, and then on the second text message, he referred to things that he'd already seen in my Facebook feed around being in his area. So I'd made sure that because we were long distance, I knew that one of the barriers to our relationship was being so far away. So I made a number of small trips that were work related to somewhere within sort of 45 minutes drive of where he is based.
Okay.
And did a couple of check-ins and said, I'm having coffee here, or I'm with a colleague in such and such place. Not so close that it looks stalky, okay, but close enough that it was commutable. And then next time I spoke to him, he said, so why are you down here? I see you're down here. You're working down here? And every time I made a post, I would text him the day after generally. So I'd make the post the day before, and then the text would be the day or so afterwards. And he would always ask me about what he'd seen, regardless of whether it was, a local check-in, in his area, or whether it was about a day at the races, or, a meal out with friends, or who are you with? He would always ask. So I knew that he was definitely checking my Facebook. But interestingly, during the no contact period, he'd actually blocked me on social media and then unblocked me later on.
Yeah. It's one of those reactionary type actions that you take, and then you kind of after some time are like, well, I wonder what she's up to, and you unblock him. Yeah, it's a common thing I've seen.
Mm. So when was that? So that was so we did the 24 days no contact, and then after that, because I only had a limited amount of availability of his time, our conversations were quite brief. So at best, I keep a spreadsheet chart of who sent how many text messages, how many he's replied with, and how long the total conversation is, who ended it, blah, blah, blah. And in total, our text messages, up until the point where we asked to get back together, our entire conversation might last 5 or 6 texts.
Okay.
In total, so 3.
So you basically need to make the most of the conversation you possibly can.
You really need to
So what was your strategy there? Give me an example of the strategy you worked out to make the most of those conversations.
So for every text every text conversation, I knew that it had to be exciting, but I also figured out that it needed to demonstrate some values that a guy might want in a girlfriend. She needed to be trustworthy or fun, or she needed to be honest and supportive. So each conversation I had, I would tick off one of those boxes and say, okay.
So smart.
I would say, okay, he's talking about work, be supportive and be understanding about it. Or if he was talking, if he was just swapping, memes about movies or something, we would joke about it and have fun. And I would keep a little checklist and I would tick them off each time that I'd done. And I was like, right, I need to hit each of these little things on this list. And in total, I think I sent 9 text conversations over the space of 3.5 weeks.
Okay.
And he only initiated twice because he obviously didn't have signal. But it may also have been he just didn't want to. We'll never know.
Yeah. It doesn't matter now.
Yeah, it doesn't matter now. Until one day he messaged me. I think it was the day after Easter Sunday, so it would have been Easter Monday, and just said, when are you down here next? I would like to see you. And I told him, and he was like, great, I want to show you around. Let's meet for coffee. Interestingly, I'd actually suggested it to him the week earlier. So I'd said, I'm down your area quite a bit going forward, because he knew that I was going to be working.
So you dropped a hint, just not necessarily trying to get a date that moment. You're just sort of dropping the opportunity for him to ask, essentially.
Yeah, I sort of breadcrumbed the idea a little bit and said, at some point I'm going to be down. It would be great to have coffee. You would really enjoy it. I'm going now, bye. And they just ended the conversation there and didn't give him the opportunity to actually ask.
It's pretty
clever.
Ran off.
So that was about 2-3 weeks ago. It took us another 2 weeks to meet up face to face, because obviously he's working. and we met up for an afternoon, went sort of around his local village where he's working, and had coffee. And it wasn't until the very end, like we'd been talking for about 2 hours, before he said, so shall we maybe get back together? Would you like to? And he was really quite sheepish about it. He was quite shy. And I played it in such a way where I pretended that I wasn't entirely convinced that it was a good idea.
Okay.
And I sort of went, oh, well, I'm not sure, we've still got this distance problem. You don't know where you're getting your next deployment to. And he was like, no, I definitely think it's a good idea, and there's going to be no problems whatsoever. And he then tried to convince me that I wanted to be in a relationship with him. So that went well. And we ended the date after about 3 hours, something like that, 3-4 hours. And then he went back to camp, and then I sort of bimbled around for the rest of the afternoon. And I did a live feed with the girls, and they were super excited. They were like, tell us everything. Yeah. It was a really good day.
Yeah. So, the thing that struck me was just how logical you were. Like, having the spreadsheet out. I know a lot of the women, specifically on the group, will not do that because they get too emotional with their text messages. They don't think to maybe... Like, I think it's a real smart idea to list, like, the qualities that maybe you want to exhibit or prove to him in your text messages and checking them off. I feel like a lot of women, especially in the group, get a little too emotionally involved in whether he's responding or not, or if he's going to respond. And it seems to me like your situation, you made the most out of a really difficult situation where you knew you had to make every single text message almost perfect. It had to do something. That obviously probably helped to the fact that he was responsive, right? Like, when you would send a text, he would respond back. Was there ever a case where you sent him a text and he didn't respond back?
Yeah, so, during the 21 days, I decided that, I needed to plan everything out because I only had a certain amount of time. And actually doing the planning helped keep me calm because I knew I had, a schedule to fall back on.
Right.
And for me, that was almost like a coping mechanism to help keep me focused. It was like, I'm not going to panic on the day about what my texts are going to look like because I've already got them planned, and I'll just send them, fire and forget, and then carry on with the rest of my day. And in terms of the text messages, so the vast majority of them I did get a positive response to, but there were a couple where I got no reply whatsoever. And although I'm perhaps a bit more together and calm about sending my text and being sort of detached emotionally from it, I still went to pieces. There was those where I was like, why hasn't he replied?
So did you let me ask you, did you chart those as well? Like, did you chart those down and say, okay, this kind of text clearly didn't work? Did you find a pattern there at all with your guy?
So I kept a log of what texts tanked, why they tanked, and what the content was, and maybe it was the time of day as well. So
the time, you think it was kind of like a combo of everything there?
Yeah. So I knew that videos didn't work. And when I thought about it, I thought, videos require more reception.
Exactly, right.
So maybe don't bother with videos.
Right.
I knew that whenever I asked him, how's your day going? What are you up to today? When we were mid-conversation, not when we were opening a text conversation, he would immediately ghost.
Okay.
So I don't ask personal questions. Keep it lighthearted. Don't fish into what he's up to because he's not going to answer. So I would chart those as well, and then I would know which topics to abandon. Don't bother with videos. Don't bother with personal questions, and I would chart them as well, along with the number of texts we would have in our responses, so as I could see the improvement, sort of day on day, week on week, in terms of the growth of our conversations, and that was really useful as well because it helped me identify things that were going well and things that weren't so workable.
So in your estimation, do you think doing that strategy during the texting, because I guess I'm asking because I noticed a lot of people in the group specifically are struggling with their text messaging phase. Specifically, I think it's more getting him to respond. A lot of people freak out when they can't get him to respond. And I'm always trying to tell them, well, it's important. It gives you important data because it kind of tells you, hey, what's not working. Do you think that like helped you going forward at all? Was that exercise like a really smart way for you to approach it?
It was really helpful. But the other thing that I decided when I was going to be sending texts was that it isn't always important to get a reply. Sometimes you're just conveying a positive feeling. You know, you're just saying to someone, I hope you're having a great day. And they go away feeling great that they've had a text message, even if they didn't reply.
Right.
So, when I was crafting my text, obviously I wanted a reply.
Yeah.
But I was always of the mindset that it doesn't matter if I don't get one, because it still worked on some level. It just wasn't enough at that particular moment in time. And on days when I was sending my texts, I would make sure I had something planned for that day to keep me busy, whether I was going to visit family, whether I was, going on a business trip. I would make sure that day was ram-packed full of stuff so that I didn't have time to sit and check my phone every 5 minutes, because that's when the paranoia and the panic sets in. So definitely keep busy.
Yeah, keeping busy is an important thing, but I think also maybe the added benefit of having a combo of the phone, text messages, as well as maybe Facebook, because it seems to me like Facebook gave him an idea of something to continue the conversation with. Like if he sees, hey, I noticed you're in the area or something, that's something that he sends to obviously continue the conversation, or maybe even probe a little bit. Maybe it's his way of kind of feeling you out, like, hey, maybe we should get together soon. But obviously it worked out. But let's move on to... What was your takeaway from your in-person interactions with him?
So when we first met up, it was a bit strange because, you haven't seen someone in several, weeks or months, weeks in my case. And it was very much kind of, how am I supposed to act? He obviously felt a little bit awkward. He wasn't too sure whether, because we hadn't called it a date. We just called it coffee.
Okay, coffee.
Yeah, let's just get coffee.
Let's get coffee,
And
coffee turns into a 3-hour date, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was sat there, I was thinking, is this a date? Is this not a date? It's a friend date. It's not a date. And, the pair of us were sort of skirting around the issue of, what are you doing down here? Why do you live here? Why have you moved? Oh, you're going to be so close. Oh, that'd be lovely, won't it? And then where neither of us wanted to kind of address the issue of why have you called me here?
The elephant in the room, basically.
Yeah, the big elephant in the room. And it took him a while to kind of build up that kind of courage to ask.
I've been there. I know it takes some time. He needs to kind of get himself inserted in the conversation.
Several coffees and a bit of paper.
Maybe some alcohol, some liquid confidence.
And so. The afternoon initially, the first half hour, 20 minutes were a little bit awkward to kind of break the ice. And then after that, it turned into a much more comfortable conversation. And it wasn't until we went for a walk after the coffee that we started talking about, the getting back together part. And I think actually the process of going for a walk made it easier.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but just sort of being outdoors, it was a little bit more calming, and it was a little bit less pressure than, because when you're sat opposite someone, it feels like an interview.
Yeah, it does. And I think also one interesting thing about me that I know about myself, and maybe your boyfriend's the same way, but oftentimes when I'm doing interviews like this with people and I'm like sitting, it feels weird to me because usually when I'm talking to someone on the phone, I get up and literally walk around my office. To me, it's like the conversation flows better and I feel like I'm moving and I'm doing something. Maybe it's just a way of loosening him up and getting his nerves out.
I think so, because there's a little bit more distraction there. It's not quite so focused. So I would definitely recommend, if you're just going to meet, maybe go for a walk afterwards, or make sure that meeting, do an activity, or
maybe
something.
Start with a walk and then go with a coffee or something, or meet him at a mall. Maybe, I don't know. Obviously, that wasn't the case in your situation, but you just have to. The army thing and the long distance thing, you just have to make do with what you've got. But I'm also curious, what was like the physical connection like between the two of you? Were you kind of scared to touch each other? Like what did you hug? How did that go?
So when we first where I first met him, it was he'd lost a lot of weight because the new post
obviously in the mountains, right?
Super physical, and so he walked. I sort of went, oh my god, you've really trimmed down.
Oh, I see. You did the abs thing, Oh,
flexing the muscles, feeling good about himself. And it was planned, it wasn't like I had thought, give him a compliment, he'll feel good. He was, boost his ego a little bit. And so he gave me like a sort of the kind of hugs you give your grandma, where you hug someone, but
the Voldemort hug is what I call it. Yeah, you ever seen that Harry Potter where Voldemort goes over to hug Draco Malfoy, and it's like the most awkward hug ever?
One of them. Where you stick your bum out, but
yeah, basically.
Grandma hug, and went for this coffee, and so there was no touching at all during the coffee thing.
So he's clearly very nervous,
yeah,
body
very,
language,
very
yeah.
And I could tell, but it wasn't until we sort of got to going for the walk thing that we wandered around and then sat down on this little sort of park bench and started talking about things, and then he sort of put his arm around me after we'd started having the conversation.
His heart must have been beating like a jackhammer inside. He must have just been like, oh, I'm putting my arm around,
Yeah, it's like, is she gonna flinch? Is she gonna run away?
Right.
So he put his arm around me. We had a hug. Though I sort of sat there for a little while, carried on talking, then finished the date with a kiss, another hug. And then we talked a bit more, and then he went off and went back home. But yeah, so the beginnings of the date was really super awkward, both in terms of conversation, but also in physical contact as well.
So clearly he's nervous, but let me ask you about you. Were you nervous? Did you feel you were awkward at all, or did you kind of bring your A game and he just took him a while to get to his?
Well, I think all the way through our relationship, he was always, it's a little bit odd to think of, an army officer as someone who might get nervous.
Not necessarily. I remember I used to be really scared about like going on dates with someone. Like, do I touch their hand? Do I not touch their hand? How do I hug them? I've totally given the grandma hugs before, so that's how I knew. I was like, I've been there. I know what that's like.
So he was during sort of the early stages of our dating. He was always super, super nervous. It always surprised me. I was like, you're the alpha male in your world. Why do you not?
You're
why
right. Take your woman, hug her. Be confident.
Supposed to be super manly, just deal with it. But so it wasn't a surprise that when we got to the meetup last week or the week before, that he was more nervous than I was. He's quite introverted generally, whereas I'm quite extroverted and quite outgoing. So I pretty much had to take the lead in terms of conversation and kind of easing him up a little bit.
Right.
Yeah. So I had to do a lot of the legwork in terms of conversation until he was feeling a little bit more comfortable.
So where are we now? How do things stand now? Obviously, you're back together, but like going forward, how do you make this thing work?
So in terms of us going forward, we've got a period of about 2 or 3 months where it will remain long distance.
That's tough, but I think I've done that before, but it's tough. There's a lot of Facebook spying going on. I remember that's what I remember.
and that's pretty important, because I was thinking about, now we're back together, you can't just drop the whole ungettable girl stuff.
Not really.
You have to carry on. And particularly if they're doing a lot of Facebook spying, you can't go from being like a 10 to being back to being a 5.
It's interesting. But I guess the advice I can give you is just my knowledge of what it was like for me. I remember when I'd go through those long stretches of not seeing Jen, I wouldn't care so much about the ungettable girl stuff. I was just like, she had better not posted a picture with a guy. She had better not post a picture with a guy. So it was one of those little audits.
Yeah, definitely no posting pictures with guys, but still looking like I'm doing stuff as opposed to.
I think that's a very intelligent way to approach it. Yeah. It'll also make him want to come see you more.
Yes, that was my logic when I was doing the posts. I know a lot of the girls go for the jealousy posts.
You got to be careful how you use that.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of those. I would rather go for the fear of missing out posts.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea, especially if you're in a relationship with someone.
Yeah, go for selling a lifestyle that someone wants to be part of, as opposed to maybe I'll leave you. I just don't think that's a very positive message. So we've got a couple of dates lined up between now and when I move. So part of the work that I did over the 21 days was to actually plan my move. So I'd spoken to my current employer and said, we're allowed to work and live anywhere in the country, because most of the time I work from home. And
hey, me too.
So I mean, it's great.
Yeah.
I travel maybe 1 or 2 days a week, but it doesn't really matter from where. And so I said, you know what, we've got a base further down that end of the country. Can I move? And they said yes. And that was really positive for me, because it means it closes the distance for us. So I'm moving in about August time, maybe September, and that'll put us within, I don't know, half an hour's drive of each other.
Oh, that's easy. That's not long distance anymore. That's just a long drive.
Just for us, that's a commute to work.
That's essentially a commute to work. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So that should be good. We've got a couple of dates planned, and then I know he's got a couple of deployments coming up, but they're only short ones, so 2 or 3 months each. And over here, you get what we call half term. So halfway through the deployment, you get to come home for a week. Okay. So they're really not, even if they're 2 or 3 months, you're really only looking at 7 weeks apart at best.
Okay.
Get to see each other. So it's not so bad. So that's where we are in the short and medium term, and then long term, who knows?
Well, I think ultimately you maybe have closed the distance gap. It's just more of his job just, I guess, deploys him a lot. That makes it difficult, So I'd wonder when that would eventually end, because that makes I know it can make relationships real difficult with people in the Army.
So for us, over in the UK, once you get beyond a certain rank, you don't tend to go overseas anymore.
That works.
So that would be for him. For the next year, or for the next couple of years, it's still a problem, but nothing beyond that. So once he makes the next rank up, he won't be leaving the UK. He'll be based.
You'll be getting him home. You're not going to let him.
So he'll get a UK garrison job, and he'll just command the operations of that, and they won't do any foreign deployments. So for us, there's an end point where he won't be working overseas anymore.
So, do you think this guy is potentially marriage material? Is that like looking at your goals in life? Is that eventually what you want out of a relationship?
Yeah.
That's a dumb question to ask, but
Yeah, him and I had talked about it before we'd broken up. Not like the week before we broke up, but
right.
Quite way before we'd broken up. And it's definitely something that the pair of us would like into the future. And it was definitely one of the things that I took time to reflect on during my no contact period of, if this guy isn't marriage material, then it's not worth doing.
Exactly, yeah.
So definitely, I'm hopeful, but at the moment, I definitely consider him marriage material.
Well, that's great, and it seems like you've done really the hard work. Like, you got him back, but moving it's not an easy thing to move, but maybe for you it's, I don't know, are you moving far away from your family, or is...
it's a good 7-8 hours easy.
From your family?
Yeah, completely to the other end of the country.
Wow. So, I'm trying to think. I was about 2-3 days away from my family when I moved, so a little bit different, but it's still pretty far.
Yeah.
So,
I've lived away before.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the first time I've moved from one end of the country to live there for a few years, and then at the moment I'm back living so close to my parents, but not so close that they're here every day.
So close that they're upstairs.
But I'm prepared for moving away from my friends and family. But it's not the end of the world.
Well, if you think this guy is the one, then I say go for it. You kind of have to throw yourself into it. You seem really like you have an intelligent approach about almost everything from what I've seen so far. I feel like I should just like hire you and then just be like you deal with those people. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, abandon all emotion.
Right.
And adopt some logic.
Well, it's hard to do that when you're super emotional too. So no. But what would you say? I mean, you're probably going to say the group, but what would you say the most helpful aspect of the website, the book, or the group was? Like out of those three, which one did you find yourself gravitating towards the most?
Definitely towards the group. Although even after I joined the group, I would still go back and check the website for specific chapters or specific topics. Like say, for example, what's your ex-boyfriend thinking during the no contact period and stuff like that. Right, Why doesn't he reply? I think I read the why doesn't he reply one many times because there were a couple of days when I got no response and was like, why doesn't he reply?
Why doesn't he? No.
Yeah, it drive me nuts. So I would check the website as well. But the thing I liked about the group was how quickly you get an answer to your question. So you can post something on the group, and within a few minutes you've got like 10 answers from other members who are giving you their views and opinions or experience of what's happened when they've been in a similar situation.
Right.
And that's really helpful because when you're sending a text message, you can't wait an entire day to send a reply. Sometimes it needs to flow like a conversation. So being able to post something on the group straight away and have an answer was really helpful.
Now, would you say? Well, one of the things I've noticed with the group specifically is a lot of women who seem to get those quick answers are the ones who pay it forward, so to speak. They're the ones who go out of their way to help others, and then they put that good faith out there, and that person remembers and answers them in return. Whereas, would you say like that was kind of you, that you went and would answer other people's questions as well?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's like anything in life. If you help people, they're more likely to help you, and it almost becomes you help your friends. So if they help you, they help you back. Whereas if you don't have friends, then they're not going to help you. And it's what is that?
I've noticed a lot of people who complain that they don't get answers when I actually go and look. They have not helped anyone before at all. Versus, you see like Corey. She posts something, she gets a million answers. Anna gets a million answers. You get a million answers usually. Demetra gets a million answers. But they're constantly doing stuff to help others.
Yeah, and I've got actual real friends in the group now. People that I know, and we talk on Messenger or on WhatsApp. So it actually grows beyond the group, where you can where they'll contact you or you'll contact them, and it's not just necessarily about texting and posts. It can just be about day-to-day stuff, and actually you're building extra rapport, and it helps with stuff like your Facebook check-ins and your social media likes and all kinds of stuff like that, because if you're more popular, people are more likely to help you with your posts and put comments on them and those kind of things. One of the other things that I did for my Instagram account was a bit strange. So, we're always talking about getting more comments and likes on
So some people will say, hey, could you post or could you like my thing, right?
I paid an internet marketing company $6.
So how much money?
$6. That was it.
Okay, $6.
To upmarket my Instagram account to him, so it would always be at the top of his feed, and he wouldn't know why. And,
that is clever. Little ninja too.
Yeah, and so it grew my number of followers from something I had like hardly any followers, like 20 or something pathetic, up to over 1,000. So all of my posts now have like over 100 likes. They've got tons of comments underneath them. It looks super popular, and it only cost me like $6.
$6. For a second, I thought you said $6,000.
No.
I was like, I hope it was well spent. I mean, you got them back, but that's a lot of money.
Literally loose change in my pocket. It was the best $6 I've ever paid.
That's an interesting idea. And now, are they like real people, or are they just like the fake traffic?
They're real people. So, I mean, you get occasional companies, and some of them are bots, but the vast majority of people are real people who you interact with. Some of them send you messages, and I mean, it's been really useful.
Bots. Sorry.
The word of the week at the moment, bots.
Right, bots. You'll get that if you're in the group. That's just going to stay between us. But anyways, we're going to end the interview here. But I want to ask you if you have what was the most important thing that you did to get your ex back? Out of everything you did, if you could only say one thing, what was the most important thing?
I would say it was the no contact period.
Wrong. Chris Siders. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, it definitely. Because it gives you a chance to miss. It gives them a chance to miss you. It gives them space. Because if you're going to do improvements, you're not going to see improvement on day one. You need that whole kind of montage thing. Like in the Rocky movie.
80s Rocky. Running on the beach with Apollo Creed. Yeah. Eye of the Tiger.
To be able to see the difference between when you broke up to when you're eventually contacting them, and also it gives you time to kind of get your head together because by day 5 of the breakup, I was a mess. But by day 21, I was in a much better position, and I was, not just crying on the train or having outbursts and feeling all needy. So I think that the 21 days was the most important part of the whole process.
Well, I'm glad that you did it. I'm glad that you got your ex back. We'll be wishing you the best. Please don't leave the group. We love you there.
No, stay around.